Hey everyone, this is Tim McKean in the eLearning department. I wanted to take some time today to talk about module requirements and prerequisites. First, let's talk about requirements. Module requirements are specific tasks that you designate within a module that need to be completed for the module to be considered complete. So let's take a look here. Here I've got modules for the Canvas training for faculty class. And then over in this window, just so you understand what's going on here, is I've logged in and I'm in student view. So we can kind of compare the settings that we can set as faculty and then what the students see as a result of those settings. So let's take a look. So here I have a module 00 getting started module, which is pretty common, and probably most of you have a getting started or some kind of orientation module in there. And I've set this so that the students need to complete all the items. To take a look at the requirements, I can click on the gear icon and go to Edit. And then here are my requirements. So requirements have a couple different options. Students must complete all of the requirements. And then I can choose whether students need to move through the requirements in order or if they can go through any order they want. And then we can set individual requirements here. So I've set each item in the module to be some kind of requirement. So for the first content page, they need to view the item. For the course introduction page, they need to view that page. And there are different options that I can set. I can make them mark it as done. I could make them have to contribute to a page. And depending on what kind of item it is, for example, if I have down here an assignment, then I can choose that they have to submit the assignment, or they have to mark it done, or they have to just view the assignment, or I can set a minimum score. You can see that down here under this quiz, we've set a minimum score of 8 out of 9. So in order for this module to be considered complete, that student would have to pass that quiz with a score of 8 out of 9 before Canvas considers that complete. So you can set up any items that are in your module as module requirements. The other option that we have here that I use very seldom is an option that says students must complete one of these requirements. So if I were to click that, now instead of having to complete all the requirements, they only need to complete one. So this is kind of only useful if you have maybe some optional assignments where you have a category of assignments and students need to complete one out of the 3 to, maybe this is a way that you're differentiating or using universal design to give students options on how they're going to demonstrate their mastery of the skills. You could say, hey, you need to complete one of these 2 or 3 assignments, and then you could set it up that way. Like I said, I very seldom use that one. Most of the time when we do requirements, we'll click students complete all the requirements, and I usually want students to move through the requirements in the order that I've set them in the module. So this is really useful when, especially for the way I'm using it here, in a getting started module, you want to guide the students through the materials instead of having them skip around. I know I've talked to instructors that say, hey, the students are just skipping to the quiz before they even read the content. This would be one way to ensure that students are accessing the course materials in the order that you've set them. I'm going to go ahead and click Update Module to close that one out. And so since we saw those settings, I'll click over to Student View now, and you can see here that in Student View, the 00 module getting started says complete all the items, and you can notice that the only item that's available is the module 00 objectives, the first page. None of these other pages are available, and they tell you what the requirement is, that this one needs to be viewed, this one needs to be viewed, this one needs to be viewed. And then over here on the right, we actually now have a new item or a new object on the module page, which is this little empty circle. And if I hover over it, it tells me what the requirement is. I must view this page. So if I view this page as a student, here's my module 0 objectives. I can read through. I can click Next. And of course, we don't know whether the student is actually reading the content carefully, but just the fact that they've actually addressed the page, they've looked at it and acknowledged that it's there, is a step in the right direction, right? So I can click Next, and you can see I can move through these pages freely. And then if I go back to the modules page, it's going to show that those pages have been completed. That requirement of viewing that page has been completed. And I like doing this. As a student, I really like also seeing that I've completed things, that, you know, it's almost like an interactive checklist now. So by setting up those requirements, it makes the student do those things. You can set it up to be in order. And then I also have this item here that says, hey, this module is started, but it's not completed yet. Let's scroll down and look at the next one. You'll notice that this next module is open to all the students. They can just click on any of these things, even without completing the 0, 0 module. So that's a problem that I want to fix. So I'll come back into my instructor view here. And we're going to fix this with something called module prerequisites. Now, prerequisites are modules that need to be completed in order to unlock other modules. And that's exactly what we want here. I want them to complete the Getting Started module before they can unlock the second module, or the module 01. So what I need to do is come into the gear here, click Edit, and then I can add a prerequisite here. So I'll say the prerequisite, and you notice from this drop-down list, the prerequisites are only modules that come before this module in the course. So right now I've only got two things, the Asking Questions discussion board and the 0, 0 module. So I'll set that 0, 0 module as the prerequisite for unlocking the 0, 1 module, and I'll update that. And it's just warning me that I already have students in there, so yes, I'm going to relock those modules. And now when I come back over to Student View and refresh that page, okay, now you'll notice that I still have my status of I've started the 0, 0 module, I've completed 3 of those things, but now you'll see that I cannot access module 01 until I have completed the other module, and it shows that it's locked, and it shows what the prerequisite is. So module 0, 0, Getting Started, needs to be completed first. So this is a great way of making sure that your students don't jump too far ahead in the course. If I wanted students to not be able to move into module 2, you'll notice here that module 2 is open and unlocked. I could do the same thing. I could click the gear icon here, hit Edit, and then I could add a prerequisite. And notice here that I can add 01 now as a prerequisite for 02. So make them do one module at a time. Or I could also set that prerequisite to be the 0, 0. So if I did that, then now students would have to complete the Getting Started module, but then once they've done that, it unlocks both the module 1 and module 2. So a lot of flexibility that you can do, and these are just kind of general tools to help you guide your students through the course in the order and in the way that you want them to access the course materials. Let me show you something else back here in Teacher View. You don't have to set, if you're setting requirements, you don't have to set everything as a requirement. In fact, you can probably see here that if I look at module 1, that it's very light, but right now the only requirement is actually this module 1 Introduce Yourself assignment. So let's go ahead and add requirements for these other items on the to-do list. And this way I could require that the assignments be done, but not necessarily have to require that everyone, if they already know the content, hey, let them take the quiz if you want them to do that. And that's how that kind of works in this Canvas class. If you're already familiar with Canvas, I want you just to be able to turn in the assignments and move on. So I'm going to come here into module 1. I'm going to click the gear icon and click Edit. I'm going to scroll down to see what my requirements are. I've only got one so far. So I want to add a requirement. So I'll click Add Requirement. And here's all the items that are in that module. So I've already got the introduction, so I want to add the other course and submit the assignment. And then I'll add a requirement also for taking the quiz. And I'll want them to score at least, let's say 9 out of 11. Okay, and then I can update that module. And now if I come back over to Student View again and refresh that, now you can see that I've got empty bubbles on all three of those items. I need to submit this assignment, I need to submit that assignment, and I need to score at least 9. So this is a great way for you to kind of guide your students through this process. A couple things to watch out for as you're setting up your module requirements and prerequisites. If you have a requirement that students pass, for example, this quiz. If I set up a requirement that students pass that quiz with a score of at least 8 out of 9 before they can complete that module, and if I set up a prerequisite where they can't move on to the next module until the first module is completed, what happens to a student that doesn't pass the quiz? They get stuck, right? And so you need to make sure that you're building your prerequisites and your requirements in alignment with whatever your course policies are. So if you have for example, this quiz is set so that students can take it as many times as they need until they get the required score. So that works. They can take it again until they pass it, and then they can move on to the next module. But if you've got your quiz set up where they only get one chance, if they bombed it the first time, or their computer crashed, or even something as innocent as that, and then for some reason they failed the quiz, well, now they're locked out of the rest of the course and they can't move on. The same could be said if you had a requirement on an assignment that they needed to submit, or they needed to pass by get a certain score. And then if you set that assignment to lock after the due date, well, if they missed that assignment, now what? Now they're locked out of the rest of the course. And then you have to go in and manually either remove the requirements for the entire course, which is probably not the best choice, or make an exception for that student and give them additional time to finish the assignment, or give them additional attempts on their quiz. So that's one of the things to kind of watch out for, that make sure that as you're thinking through these requirements and these prerequisites, that you're not building a scenario where your students can get locked out of the course. And then another thing to watch out for, and it's kind of on a related note, as you're moving courses forward from one quarter to the next, be sure that you come in and review your course requirements and prerequisites once you've done that roll forward process, once you've done that import into a new quarter, just to make sure that your due dates and your lock dates and things like that all still make sense. Just like I said before, if you've got an assignment set to not be available after a certain date, or if you've got it where students can't submit after the due date, then you're setting up this potential scenario where a student could get locked out of the course, or get to a point where they can't proceed anymore without you doing some extra work and then unlocking it or opening that door for them. So just a couple things to watch out for. Hopefully that all made sense, and this is a tool that you can use, again, just to help guide your students through the course in the way that you want them to experience it. If you want them to be able to click around and do things out of order, that's great. Or you can just require that they move through item by item in order that you set it. And you can even set specific benchmarks on what scores they need to get or what kind of activity they need to do on the page. Let eLearning know if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time.